Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mac Story.
Hello and welcome to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. And thanks for listening. Today you're listening to one of 15 episodes that I recorded with my wife, Rhea Story. So you'll be hearing both of us speak together. And we're speaking to you about a book that we actually wrote together called Change Happens, Leading Yourself and Others Through Change. And it's based on a lot of principles that we learned along the way. And we'll share some personal stories, some things that are not in the book. But as you listen to this, if you enjoy listening to Rhea, and I'm pretty sure you will, make sure you check out her podcast, which you can find on your favorite app by searching for her name, Rhea, R-I-A, Story, S-T-O-R-Y. And also, she's all over LinkedIn. She puts out a lot of content. She's got a lot of books on leadership development and personal growth. So be sure to check out Rhea. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. All right, we're on chapter 9 of 15. Got Rhea and Mac here making it happen for you on our book, Change Happens, Leading Yourself and Others Through Change. So I want to do a quick recap because we're kind of transitioning. As we move into chapter 9, we're kind of transitioning, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But chapter 1, and I hope you've listened to these episodes. If not, go back and get busy listening to those, because it actually leads up to each chapter, builds up to the next one. It doesn't matter, which order you listen to these in. You can get a lot of value listening to them individually without listening to the other ones before, but it'll mean a lot more if you do listen to all of them. Chapter 1 was Nothing Fails Like Success. Chapter 2, The Impact of Change. Chapter 3, 2 Ways to Deal with Change. Chapter 4 was Resisting Change. Chapter 5 was Change or Be Changed. Chapter 6, If You Snooze, You Will Lose. Chapter 7, The Challenge of Change. And the one we just finished up, The Fear of Change. So now we're going to transition into moving into change. We've been just talking about the basic concepts of change and how they impact people and the way they think and what they do and don't do and how it impacts their influence, positive and negative. But really what we're about to move into now is really where this chapter 9 is titled Embracing Change. And so the coming chapters are going to be leveraging change, leading change, communicating change, initiating change, becoming a change champion. And then we'll finish up with chapter 15, the courage to change, putting it all together and wrapping it up. So the rest of this series is really going to help you to leverage your influence, to make sure you're shining and not whining. We kind of covered the whining part. Now we're going to focus on the shining part. So as we kick off this chapter, I want to open it with a quote from Jack Welch. And Jack Welch, he was the former CEO of GE. He made a lot of change there, without a doubt. Some people like the way he did it. Some people don't. But either way, he got a lot of good results. But the one thing that I want to take away from him to open this up is he said, change before you have to. Change before you have to. And that's what embracing change is about. Learning to embrace change is much different than learning to tolerate change. We can tolerate change, just means we kind of accepting it, but we're not necessarily embracing it. There's a lot of difference. And if you've ever led people through change, you know the difference. What you laughing about, Rhea?
Oh, well, when you said that, I just had this visual of, you walk into a room and there's somebody you love and you just walk over and you give them this big old hug, right? That's embracing. Versus you walk into a room and there's somebody you don't like. And I mean, you can't like literally kick them out of the room, but you tolerate them. But you sure don't walk over and give them a big hug.
Well, I was just thinking as you said that, you using your little analogy there, your illustration, you go over and you give someone a big hug and they just stand there and they don't give you a hug back. They kind of tolerated it, but they didn't embrace your hug. So that's kind of a good visual, right? That's a good way to say it, Rhea. What you come up with there. That's true. So but embracing change means you welcome the opportunity to try something new. And in this episode today, we're going to talk about 5 ways you can embrace change.
Hmm.
You want to kick us off into that, Rhea? I mean, this is some good stuff we're going to talk about today, but this is for those who really want to move forward, who want to embrace change and avoid mediocrity.
Hmm. I really like this first one. The first one, first of 5 ways you can embrace change is stop and think. And the reason that that is so important is that action is the enemy of thought, right? If we're always doing and going and achieving and accomplishing, that's good. But if we're always doing that, we're always taking action, there's no space or time for us to slow down and think. And I mean, our thoughts are so powerful when we talk about getting from where we are to where we want to go. So slow down and spend some time thinking. If we are always a human doing, we can't be a human being. And
Oh,
I think that it's so incredibly powerful because so many of us, particularly these days, your phone is never more than 6 inches from your hand. And, it's so easy when you're standing in line somewhere to pick up your phone and flip through your emails and things like that. And yeah, there's absolutely a need to stay caught up and in touch. But if you're always doing that every single minute, then you aren't taking time to just sit and think, or walk and think if that's your thing, or go run. I like to run and think, that works too. But make sure that whatever it is you're doing, you have time in your life, particularly when it comes to embracing change. Stop and think. Get somewhere quiet and think about what needs to change and why, and think about what you need to do in order to create that change.
yeah. Ask yourself some questions. And in my book, Defining Influence, uh, increasing your influence increases your options. I actually use that line, stop and think. I put stop and think sections throughout the entire book, and I would say stop and think, put it in bold, and then ask some questions of the reader. I was trying to actually help them do that because in that book, I'm presenting and providing, provoking a lot of thought relative to change, and I didn't want the reader just to zip through the book. The goal is not just to turn the page. The goal is to help them increase their influence. So let's talk about this second way you can embrace change is let go of the old. It's strange how nostalgia makes the past seem better than it was, and you don't want to spend too much time looking back. Resolve to remember the past, but let it go and move on to the future. The past wasn't as good as it seems now. Even if it was, it's gone. And that's a pretty cool thing. Those thoughts about letting go of the old, because I know a lot of people they can't embrace change because they dwelling on what was, and a lot of times what was will never be again. It's gone. It's either someone else has moved on, or some uh, product has moved on, or some way of doing business has moved on. I mean, we've moved on. Technology has changed. It's not going back. There's some people probably still wanting to play their 8-track tapes, but they ain't gonna happen. Not in a new car. Not in a new world. They may have an old player that they've held on to, but you got to let go of the old. I mean, embracing change is really saying, however we did it was great, but how can we do it better? And better could be personally, how can I do it better in my life? How can I get better? And that's why we talk about growing and developing nonstop. And then in the professional world, I'm telling you, the people who get paid the most at work are those who can let go of the old and embrace change to take them to something new. I mean, that's you got to let go of the old to get better. I mean, you can't keep doing the same thing and get better. Something's got to change, especially at work.
Yeah, I like what you said there. And, it really, there again, like all of the points that we've talked about in this podcast episode series, is that all of this makes sense when we talk about it, right? It's common sense that if we are constantly holding on to what was, then we don't have room to embrace what can be, right? That's common sense. It makes perfect sense. I guarantee you, most people are like, yeah, so what? Move on. Uh, but here's the thing, the greatest gap in the world is the gap between what we know and what we do. It might make perfect sense, but how many of us struggle with it at some level, personally or professionally? Probably all of us. I've never met someone who didn't struggle at some level with some facet of embracing change, because it's just human, right? We're human, and we're certainly not perfect, and we're going to make mistakes. And so, this is one, I think, common scenario of embracing change that challenges us at some point in our life. Maybe we get it right 75% of the time, but maybe we're great at embracing change at work, in the community, embracing new technology. But maybe, we're challenged to move to a new city, and we have an opportunity to embrace that. We don't like it. We're like, man, it was so much better in that city where we used to live. I knew everybody, I had good neighbors, and so you don't go meet your new neighbors because you're holding on to the image of the old ones, and you miss out. And I think that's the sad part, is when we're not willing to let go of the old, it prevents us from gaining something in the future.
Yeah, that's good stuff, Rhea. Go on and take us into number 3.
Number 3, the third way that you can embrace change is remove the clutter. And, I like to talk about this in both a physical environment and an emotional environment. You can improve your emotional environment by getting rid of the things that don't serve you. And two of the most important things to get rid of is toxic people and toxic habits. And I just recently did a blog or an article on this, because I was teaching a class, and I had someone ask me, a participant in the class, are there degrees of toxicity?
Mm.
And I thought, man, that's such a profound question. And I was like, yeah, there absolutely are degrees. From a personal perspective with relationships, there might be some people in our lives who are extremely toxic in our lives. And so we don't need to spend much or any time with that person, right? That's extremely toxic. But maybe there's someone who's not extremely toxic. It's just that they don't have some of the same values that you do. And so it's okay to spend some time with them, but you don't want to spend a lot of time with them, because as you and I know, Mac, you become more like the people you spend more time with. And so maybe that's someone in your life who you have, an occasional lunch date with twice a year, right? But they're not extremely toxic. They're just not going the same direction that you are. But this is also applicable to our habits, or our ways of embracing change. And so, in times of change, I think we can remove that clutter. We can stop and examine, are there relationships that are cluttering our lives, that are maybe holding us back? Are there, from a physical standpoint, this, when I get stressed, you will find me cleaning something. It's one of the ways I deal with change or stress, or something like that, is I like to just, throw out junk and go through the drawers and clean out all of the stuff that needs to be thrown out. And it's kind of psychological as much as physical, right? I'm removing that physical clutter, but it's also helpful mentally and emotionally to just say, you know what, if I get rid of some of the things that are cluttering up my environment, physically or at my headspace, then I've got room to slow down and stop and think, or I've got room to think about what really is serving me better. And it's just so powerful.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool stuff when you're talking about removing the clutter to embrace change. And that's actually a principle with lean manufacturing and process improvement. I mean, the first thing you do is what's called 5S, is standardization and organization. Out with, when in doubt, throw it out. It's kind of the rule of the 5S's. You want to get out. The first thing you want to do is get rid of everything that doesn't belong, and sort it out. What belongs in this area and what doesn't. And it's amazing, Rhea. I've led so many teams like that. And you'll go over and pick up something and say, what's this? And they don't know. They got to talk to 10 people and figure it out. When they do figure it out, they just don't want to get rid of it. They they don't even want to move it to a place to think about getting rid of it. It's like, no, it's always been here. We may need it. You know, somebody said we'd used that 15 years ago. And I mean, it's crazy. I remember one time when we were doing that, I forget, some kind of a punch type tool. And we were trying to, do 5S, get rid of all the stuff that doesn't belong, or at least organize it so that it's efficient for the people. And there's this tool, and I asked them, what's it for? And they literally had to go all around and find out. And then when we found out it was for some old product, the product's been redesigned, and they used to have to punch it, and they don't even have to punch it anymore. But before I asked the question, they were trying to figure out where to put it in it so it would be in an efficient place. And they didn't even know when they used it.
They didn't know what it was.
I mean, they used it for various things, miscellaneous type things, but it was not a part of the production process. So it didn't really even need to be there. It was just a tool that they could sometimes use and make it serve a purpose, but it was not part of the process. So that was a funny one. They had to get engineering involved and all kind of stuff, because once they tried to figure out why was it there, they had no idea, because it's been a long time, like years ago, that they used it. And so that's cool from a lean standpoint, lean manufacturing, that is a way to embrace change. It's one of the key things to do, is to get people engaged in getting rid of the clutter. And then, like you said, toxic people. That's one thing that a lot of people don't do. They don't do it in the personal life, but even in their professional life, there's toxic leaders, there's toxic team members. And sometimes the boss won't get rid of the toxic team member. So that means you need to get rid of them. And how do you do that? Is you find a new job, or you move to a new department, or you move on, because that person's just bad for you. If the boss won't do what needs to be done, then we have to do what needs to be done. It's not good for our health. If we're going in working with somebody we can't stand every day, and we also got to make sure it's not us, that we're not the problem. If nobody likes us. I had a VP recently told me he had to fire somebody, and it was about their character. But one of the takeaways, one of the things that caused him to take action, he was already thinking about it, but when he went and talked to the person actually told him, everybody's against me. And because this leader teaches character development, I mean, all the time in the organization, in his division of the organization especially, he knows who everybody is. He knows everybody else comes to his leadership training. He does volunteer training, once a month. For the most part, everybody else come to the training. This person had come once and never came back. So when he was saying basically everyone was against me, what he was telling his leader was, the people who come to the leadership training who are growing and develop themselves are against me, which was a red flag for the leader, that this person's not on board. Why would everybody else be against him? And he already had some suspicions, but from a leadership standpoint, the leader had to get rid of some clutter, get rid of the toxic people. So let's talk about the fourth way you can embrace change. Is
try something new. It's almost that we can intentionally embrace change by just kind of getting in the habit of trying something new. Read a book by an author you're not familiar with. Maybe you'll get a new perspective or learn some quotes. Meet someone new. If we can just learn to embrace change in small ways, I think that we can make it just a habit to look at that from a positive perspective. And then it gets easier to embrace it in bigger ways. So try a food that you've never tried, go somewhere different. It definitely helps us kind of broaden our mindset.
All right. And the fifth way is to create a new habit, specifically a good habit, right? Because we want positive change. So don't need to create a new bad habit, but create a new good habit. And in times of change, we can feel out of control. The mental discipline of forming a new habit will create momentum and a sense of accomplishment that will empower you. And always start with a small habit to ensure you will be successful. And I know in your latest book, Rhea, Fearfully and Wonderfully Me, and subtitle is Become the Woman You're Destined to Be. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I know in there you talk about that book's inspired a lot of people. And there's some people that I heard who were inspired purely because you talk about that start with small habits to ensure
Mm-hmm.
you'll be successful. Touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, most of the time when we want to intentionally bring about a change, a desired future state, it's a lofty goal. And that's grand. That gets us excited, it gets us fired up. But the power in actually making that happen is in the daily small changes. Because here's the thing, if you try to take on something big, it's much less likely that you'll be successful because big is intimidating. Big sounds like a lot of work. Big sounds scary. But if I can break that down into small steps that if I just move forward 1% every single day, I'll get there sooner or later, right? It's more about building and falling in love with the process that serves you in becoming whatever it is that you want to be. You've got to shift into that mindset of rather than take big giant leaps because they make me feel good, which sure they do, but be comfortable with small. Because here's the thing, if you set a small goal for yourself and you achieve it, you're building integrity with yourself, right? You've made a commitment to yourself and now you know that you're going to keep it, because every time you do that and you're successful, then it gets easier to make another small commitment. So I coach people. I'm like, break this down into something that's so small it takes you like 2 minutes or less, right? How can I make whatever it is, whatever good habit I want to start, how can I make it so small that 2 minutes is incredibly easy? I know I can do that. Exercise. If maybe I want to start exercising, but 30 minutes sounds like a lot because I'm busy, can you get it down to 2 minutes? Can you exercise for 2 minutes? Everybody's got 2 minutes, right? But if you do 2 minutes today and then 2 minutes tomorrow and 2 minutes, and after a while you'll be like, well, 2 minutes is nothing. Maybe today I'll go for three. And you leverage the power of small changes compounding over time. It's incredible because then it doesn't matter. Whatever goal we set can be big and huge, but we're going to break it down into something so easy. There is no way we could fail. It cannot be overestimated. In fact, most of the time we vastly underestimate the power of small.
Yeah, that is true. Albert Einstein had this to say. He says, all meaningful and lasting change starts first in your imagination and then works its way out. That's pretty good stuff right there. So I want to move into something that I learned actually from John Maxwell a long time ago, but not going to talk about it just yet. But I want to say first, when you embrace change, you are also embracing responsibility. So people who learn to embrace change at that moment, they literally are embracing responsibility for facilitating the change to actually take place. I mean, that's what they're doing. And the people who embrace change, if they get really good at it, they're going to be given an opportunity to lead change. But remember, leadership is influence. So it doesn't matter if you're the formal authority boss or you're just a team member and you're a peer of everyone around you. Maybe you're a frontline entry level person. Doesn't matter. You still can lead change. You still can be responsible for change by purely embracing change. So, when it comes to embracing change, there's a magic word you can proactively use to begin separating yourself from the crowd in a way that allows you to get noticed by high impact leaders and promoted for the right reasons. And that magic word is how. And I learned this from John Maxwell, quite a while back. I think it was in his book, 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth, is where I come across the concept. And I like to make sure I teach it and kind of teach it in my own way, share my own stories. But the difference is, instead of asking, can I do something? If I'm talking about me personally, trying to lead myself through change, can I do something? Or if I'm in the space of trying to lead others through change, can we do something, or can you do something? Or if I'm a parent with a child, can you do something? Talking to the child, all you got to do is put a 3-letter word in front of that. If I'm talking about me personally, how can I do something? When I say, can I do it? That's placing doubt, self-doubt. I don't know if I can. I don't even know. As soon as I shift and I put that 3-letter word, it's a powerful word. In today's episode, I hope you capture this one nugget out of all of it. is put how in front of how can I do it. If you're asking someone else on your team, how can you do it? Or if it's you're part of a team, how can we do it? Or again, if it's a child, how can you do it? How engages the person's mind? It says that there is a way. We just have to figure it out. And when you start saying how can I or how can you actually started focusing on leading. Those three letters start to make you a leader because you're influencing how other people think. You're changing their thought process. Any thoughts on that, Rhea?
Yeah, I really like that concept. It's something that, particularly as leaders, really even as people, it shifts us into that mindset of, it's going to happen. It can happen. We just have to figure out that way, and that's incredible when you talk about shifting your energy to, nah, maybe or maybe not, versus, oh, it's gonna happen, right? You're shifting that energy and saying, we just have to figure out what the path forward is. We've already decided that it's going to happen. Kind of back to the Einstein quote you shared, right? It starts in the imagination. And when you just say, how can we? That just says, okay, we just have to figure out how to get there. We already know where we're going. Now we just need to figure out what's the path forward, versus saying, can I get there? Then it's so much easier to hit a roadblock and turn around, right? I like the analogy of climbing a mountain here. If you just say, how can I get to the top? You're going to figure out a way to get to the top. But if you say, can I get to the top? Then you're climbing the mountain and you hit a big old rock slide from years past and it's blocking your path, and you're like, man, I don't know if I can get to the top because I've just hit this roadblock, and so now I'm just going to turn around and go back. Right? It's kind of a visual, but it's so powerful. And really, when we talk about that from a leadership perspective or a parenting perspective, it's the same concept. It's just leveraging that energy and that power and saying, we just assume the answer is yes. We just got to figure the rest of it out.
Yeah, can I or can you is actually a yes or no question.
Mm-hmm.
But how can I or how can you is it requires some kind of an answer. And a lot of times it requires some research or some digging or some communication with other people. So that's why it's such a powerful word from a leadership perspective. So let's listen to the voices of those who proactively embrace change. If you're a proactive person and you're embracing change, this is your voice. This is the voice you want to adopt.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to cover a couple of these. We'll go back and forth between me and Rhea, and we'll talk about it if we want to. We got 4 or 5 minutes we plan left on this session. How would a proactive person respond? That's a question you got to ask yourself. Pause instead of being reactive and maybe dismissing change or fearing change or resisting change. Pause, like Rhea talked about, stop and think. One of the ways to embrace change, and ask yourself these questions we're going to talk about. Work on that muscle. How would a proactive person respond?
Yeah, and I think that leads us into the next point, which is, how will I be viewed if I respond positively? And it always, 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 if we respond positively, always increases our influence with positive people. We will always be viewed in a more positive light if we respond positively.
Yeah, which we talked about before, is going to increase your value in the organization too. And you could ask yourself, how will I be viewed if I respond negatively? Think it. Put yourself in the leader's position. How is the leader looking at you? And then ask, how would I be viewed if I respond negatively by the leadership team? All right. So another one is, again, these are proactive ways and questions to think about when change happens. And you pause, how can I help others embrace the change? Now I'm looking at myself more as a leader. And again, it's not about position and title and authority, but if I'm embracing change, how can I help others embrace the change who maybe are resisting change or afraid of change, and that sort of stuff.
And then, something else to think about, how will this benefit me? And we've kind of touched on that. As we're learning to embrace change, it's learning to just say, what's the good that's going to come out of this? Because I can look for the good or I can look for the bad, but I guarantee you I'm going to find whatever I look for.
Yep. So what Rhea just said, how will this benefit me? Then you can add on to that is, how can I leverage this change to my benefit? Maybe you don't see how it benefits you, but now you got to go look for how can I make this change benefiting me?
Or asking yourself, how will this benefit our team? Maybe it's not just me as an individual who will benefit, but will it benefit the greater team around me?
It's not always about us. Sometimes it's about other people. Hard to believe,
Absolutely.
isn't it? Hard to believe that life involves other people. But we're just moving into, higher level of thinking. But how will this benefit the organization? If you work in the organization, you're proud to be there. You want the organization to survive and thrive so that you got your income and benefits and other people have their income and benefits. How will this change benefit the organization? Again, it ain't always about me.
How will this make us more competitive? I think technology is a great example. A lot of times embracing something new makes us more competitive, makes us more valuable, makes us quicker to respond.
And the ultimate question, I think, relative to embracing change is, how can I help make it happen? How can I help make it happen? Whatever it is. So that wraps it up for today. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.